When I read that piece about camels, I'm not persuaded yet. It seems that the gist of the article is camels had been domesticated outside the country.
In Mesopotamia.
And so Abraham might well have had camels
Because it came from that
as he
area.
came from there. Possible. But to me it feels like special pleading. They just don't want it to be not literally true. So, who knows?
No, I just found it interesting.
It is interesting.
Archaeologically, it's never been in Israel before the time of David.
The time of the monarchy.
Yeah.
Right.
But that there is evidence of camels elsewhere.
Could be.
And camels arrived in Egypt even later.
Later. So then the story in Genesis 12 about Pharaoh giving a punitive damages, including the Mali, that might not be.
That might not be true. That's fine.
How's that? Getting up there. Okay, no problem. That's right. What's up, Double L? How the L are you? I got my teeth up today.
Okay, we're ready to go. We have our lineup. You see there's a lady baseball manager now?
No, I didn't.
Some Japanese
manager.
baseball star has become a new manager. Her last name is NG.
Yeah, Ang.
Ang?
Kim Ang. She's Vietnamese. She's been in,
Another glass ceiling breaking out.
yeah, she's been in the baseball world for 30 years. She's worked her way up.
Sure. Okay. Shabbat Shalom, friends.
Shabbat
And Shabbat Shalom, friends beyond the camera. Of course, we don't know how large our total minyan is, but we have a full quorum here in the room right now, so we're able to get started. And all I can say is that when you deal with the scarcity of something, you really appreciate it. So, can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Is that better? Okay, I'll stay close to my Meturgaman. So, we're meeting every other Shabbat in this sanctuary. Not exactly every other Shabbat, but almost. The second and the fourth Shabbat of the month, telling our extended congregation as well as the local congregation. So if you want to be one of the up to 25 people who constitute the minyan, please call the synagogue office early, if possible, in any 2-week period, and let the office know that you'd like to have your name be put down for the next Shabbat, because we have to have a maximum of 25 people in the room. If you haven't done so, you only need to do this once, but if you haven't done so yet, we'll ask you to fill out a waiver. We wear gloves and masks. The only reason I'm not wearing it now is that I'm behind this protective, I don't know if you can see it, but this protective partition. So we take care of our health, we take care of each other. And we're here to say thank you to God for all the blessings. When our security is a little bit in question, our health is a little bit in question, it's appropriate, following the advice of Psalm number 30, to be even more closely connected to God. Psalm 30 says, God, when everything is hunky-dory, I feel mountain strong. But then as soon as your gaze is averted from me ever so slightly, hayiti nivhal, I just lose my equilibrium completely, and what I have to do then is turn to you, O God. So it's always a good time to turn to God, and I think now especially. So let me invite you, if you're able to stand where you are, and we'll begin with the morning benedictions. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lesech v'vina le'yavchin ben yom u'ben layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam roka haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa li kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher echin mitza'adei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozei Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam otei Yisrael betifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten layav koach. You may be seated. Baruch atah Adonai. U'tinenu hayom u'v'chol yom l'chenu l'chesed l'rachamim b'einecha v'neicha reinu timenu chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim le'amo Yisrael. 66. Yehi ratzon milefanecha.
Liban Kolavim, page 66.
Aval anachnu אשרינו שאנחנו משכימים ומריעים ערב הבוקר ויומיים פעמיים בכל יום. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד, ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו, לעולם ועד. קדש את שמך על מקדישי שמך, וקדש את שמך בעולמך, וישועתך תרומתך קרננו. ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש את שמך ברבים. At this point in the service, it's our practice to recite some passage of study and then continue with the Kaddish after study. So please have a finger on page 71 for the Kaddish after study. But for the rabbinic passage, I'd like to select one that I think it's been a long, long time since we read it, but it's a beautiful passage. The bottom of page 182, if you'll flip there quickly, we'll read that rabbinic passage about peace, which is like health, all the more appreciated when it's scarce. Rabbi Elazar taught in the name of Rabbi Hanina, peace is increased by disciples of sages. As it was said, when all your children, banayich, are taught of Adonai, great will be the peace of your children, banayich in Hebrew. The second mention of your children, banayich, means bonayich, those who have binah, those who have understanding. Thus is it written in the book of Psalms, those who love your Torah have great peace. Nothing makes them stumble. May there be peace within your walls, security within your gates. For the sake of my colleagues and friends, I say, may peace reside within you. For the sake of the house of Adonai, I will seek your welfare. May Adonai grant his people strength. May Adonai bless his people with peace. Adonai oz le'amo yiten. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. And now those reciting the Kaddish after study, please rise, page 71. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alma divera chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. Be'chayechon v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kari v'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'le'almei almaya. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דא אמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
על ישראל ועל רבנן ועל תלמידי הון ועל כל תלמידי הון ועל כל מן דעסקין באורייתא די ואתרא הדין ודי בכל אתר ואתר יהי להון ולכון שלמה רבה, חינה וחסדה ורחמין וחיים אריכין, ומזונה רווחה ופורקנה, מן קודם אבוהון דבישמיה ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא ברחמיו יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. Amen. And now the psalm for the Shabbat day, page 72. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat. Tzadik atama yifrach ki erez balevanon yizkeh shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzot Eloheinu yafrichu od yinuvun beseva deshenim vera'ananim yihihu lehagid ki yashar Adonai tzuri velo avlata bo. Those in mourning, those observing a yahrzeit now rise to recite the Mourner's Kaddish on page 82. The yahrzeit observances for this week in our congregation include Dorothy Finch, Aaron Goldstein, Mikhail Kremenchuk, Earl Houts, Leon Saunders, Harry Sonkin, Philip Klein, Lee Konigsberg, Nettie Panitz, Edna Schneider, Harry Weinstein, Isaac Dorff, Gussie Drexler, Lillian Einhorn, Jetta Fink, George Levine, Bertha Knepler, David Sheffer, and Carol Morrison. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alma divera chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. Be'chayechon v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'vizman kari v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach li'alam u'li'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal. Shemei dekudsha berichu. Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Friends, if you're able to, please rise, page 83. Baruch She'amai v'haya ha'olam Baruch Hu Baruch Hu Severeshit Baruch Shemo Baruch Omer V'yasa Baruch Hu B'kadosh Shemo Baruch Podeu Matzil Baruch Shemo Baruch Atah Adonai Yachid Cheho Olamim Melech Meshubach Umfardei Et Shemo HaGadol Baruch Atah Adonai Melech Mehulal Batishbacho.
Amen.
Please be seated, friends. Let's continue with the last of the Psalms in the middle of page 100. Hallelujah. Hallelujah el bikodsho. Hallelujah beki yahuzo. Hallelujah vigvurotav. Hallelujah kerov gudlo. Hallelujah beteka shofar. Hallelujah benevel v'chinor. Hallelujah betof umachol. Hallelujah beminim ve'ugav. Hallelujah v'tziltzalei shama. Hallelujah v'tziltzalei trua. Kol hanishama tehallelujah. Hallelujah. Kol haneshama tehallelujah. Hallelujah. Friends, if you're able to, please rise. Reuven, would you like to do the shacharit from the Yishtabach on?
I'd be glad
after the Yotzer Or, we'll skip to the Kadosh Kadosh. 106.
Yishtabach Shemcha Le'ad Malkeinu.
Yishtabach Shemcha Le'ad Malkeinu. Tihila v'tiferet kedusha u'malchut.
Brachot v'hodot me'ata v'yad olam. Baruch atah Adonai. Melech gadol batishbachot. El ha'hodot Adon haniflahot. הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך אלוהי העולמים.
אמן.
יגדל ויקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
ויעמד דברה קירותי וימלך מלכותי, בחיי כהן וימי כהן, ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב ומרו אמן.
יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויפע ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו
לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירת מיעמה ומרו אמן. 107. ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אדוני אלוהינו מכל העם יוצר ובורא כל
עושה שלום ובורא את הכל. Friends, you may be seated. We continue with the prayer of holiness in the middle of page 110.
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech kol haaretz kevodo. V'afanim v'chayot HaKodesh, פרש גדול מתנסים למצרפים, למטה משבחים ויוברים. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, ליל ברוך נעמות ייתנו. אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכח ולמהרה. אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכה כולנו מהירה ליורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאור.
אמן. 111. אהבה רבה אהבתנו והאר עינינו בתורתך ולהביא מצוותיך.
אבינו לשלום מרבה כנפות הארץ ותוליכנו כמיעוטי ארצנו כי אל פועל ישועות אתה ובנו בחרת מכל ולשון וכיפת לשמך גדול סלע באמת להודות לך לידך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני המוחב עמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ואהבת אליך בחלקך ובכל נפשך ושנאת לבך דברת בהמשך וכתבת עמו ביתך וישעריך והים שמעתי שלום מצוותי השם. נעתי מטרת שבגלל השם ונעתי ריסק לכל שבגלל השם לכל השם לכל השם מיד שמתי לברך ושם לכל השם ניאתם כבדם ונברנו לכלל
כימי השמיים על הארץ.
Page 113. ויאמר אדוני משה לאמור דבר לבני ישראל ואמרת עליהם ועשו להם ציצית כנפי פיהם לדורותם ונתנו על ציצית הכנף תכלת והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. לדור ודור קיים ושמו קיים וכיסו נכון ומלכותו ואמונתו ליד קיימת ודבריו קיימים ולאבותינו ולאבותינו אמת שאתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו מלכנו מלך אבותינו גואלנו גואל אבותינו יוצאנו תשועתנו פודינו מצילנו מלך שמך אין אלוהים זולתך. עזרת אבותינו אתה הוא מעולם. 114. תהילות אל עליון ברוך ומבורך משה בני ישראל לך אנו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נהדר הקודש נורא תהילות שיר החדש שיבחו גאולים לשמך שפת הים יחד.
כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו. Please rise. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
So Yisrael,
קום
בעזרת ישראל, ופתקנו ממך, יהודה וישראל, גואלנו, אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Together, please, the beginning of the Amidah, pages 115b and 116, and then while we remain standing, we'll conclude the Amidah through page 120 in silent devotion.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ופוקד ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם מחכל חיים בחסד מחיה מתים לרחמים רבים סומך נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה ונאמנת לחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים
נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום
נקדש שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר
קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוא כל הארץ כבודו
אז בקול רעש גדול אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול מתנסים למצרפים ליומתם ברוך יאמרו
ברוך כבוד אדוני מקומו
במקום מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך מתי תמלוך בציון בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים מעירך לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים ויהננו
תיראנה מלכותך
דוד משיח צדקך ימלוך אדוני לעולם
אלוהי ציון לדור ודור הללויה
לדור ודור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש עושה שלום
במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו.
ועל כל ישראל
ויאמרו אמן.
עושה שלום במרומיו
הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל
ויאמרו amen.
You may be seated. We continue with the conclusion of the Shacharit portion of our worship, the Kaddish Shalem, page 138.
יגרע וגרע שמר הבא.
אמן.
ויאמר דברי קריאותי ואמנת מלכותי, בחייכון ובמכון וחלק בית ישראל בכל הזמן קריא ומרו.
אמן. יהי שמי רב המבורך, לעולם לעולמי יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרבם ויתנשא ויתעלה 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 שמי קודשה. ברכו.
לעילם כבחתה ושירתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה תמרם בימיו ואמרו.
אמן.
תתקבל סרטן ואת כל ישראל, כל דום ובונדי בשמיה ואמרו.
אמן.
יהי שלום הרבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו.
אמן.
עושה
שלום במרומיו
הוא יעשה שלום
עלינו
ועל כל ישראל
ועל כל ישראל
ויאמרו אמן.
Yashkoach Ruven, and thank
ברוך
you.
תהיה.
We're turning now to the central part of our Shabbat morning worship, the Torah service. As you know, we have 7 aliyot for the Torah reading, and then we have an 8th one, the supplemental reading, the maftir, including the haftarah. Today we've been inviting veterans to take the aliyot, and we've distributed the first 6. I want to say welcome to our guest, Admiral Shalansky. Will you take the 7th aliyah for us? You can do it from just standing at your seat. And Mark Stadler will recite the haftarah, do the maftir, and you can do it from that table and microphone right there. Okay, you know we have a modified procedure. Steve Legum does our ark openings. That's why our president has moved from that side to that side. There's no political message intended in moving to the other side of the aisle. I promise you that. The Torah that we're actually using is right here, and the Hagbah, the lifting and the dressing of the Torah, takes place right here as well. So we do this in an abundance of caution because we care about everyone's health. Continuing now on page 139. Please feel free to join with me. And when the ark is opened, then, if able, please rise. Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai v'ein kema'asecha malchutcha malchut kol olamim umemshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai imloch li'olam v'hed Adonai oz li'amo yiten Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom Avarachamim heitiva v'tzoncha et Zion Tivneh chomot Yerushalayim Ki v'cha levad batachnu Melech el Ram v'nisa Adon olamim Vayihi binso Aharon vayomeh Moshe Kuma Adonai v'yachutzu oivecha v'yanusu misanecha mipanecha Yibzion teisei
Eitzei Torah Udivar Adonai Yerushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Le'amo Yisrael B'Kdushato.
Page 140. Anavda de kutsha berichu. Vihu elahal kishot, viorate kishot, viyohi kishot. Umaske lemeba tabevan ukishot. Beyanarachetz, velishme kadisha, kadisha yakira, anna emar tushbechan. Beyanarachetz, velishme kadisha, kadisha yakira, anna emar tushbechan. Yehi ra'ava kodamach, v'tiftach libi b'oraita, v'tashlim mish'alim b'liba dechol amach Yisrael, לתהבול חיים ולשלם. אמן. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
אחד אלוהינו גדול אדוננו קדוש שמו.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonai, Kadosh Shemo.
גדלו לאדוני איתי, ונרוממה שמו יחדיו. לך אדוני הגדולה והגבורה
והתפארת
והנצח וההוד, כי כל בשמיים ובארץ,
כי כל בשמיים ובארץ.
לך אדוני המלאכה והמתנשא לכל ראש.
רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להודו רגליו קדשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להור קודשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו.
You may be seated. Today's Torah portion has a very different feel than the ones we've been reading since the beginning of the liturgical year. Today's reading is devoted to the story of the betrothal and ultimately the marriage of Isaac to Rebekah. So it feels more like a pastoral story. It's as if the stories of Homer were interrupted by a novel by Jane Austen, all of a sudden. Very different feel. And I've often reflected that the changing of gears that you can sense is because the Bible wants us to recognize that in the life of the Jew, there are the tumultuous external events, times when we actually have to stand up and fight for our lives, times when we have to stand up and fight to save those who are dear to us, such as Abraham did to save Lot when Lot was kidnapped back in chapter 14. There are times of tremendous trial and trial of faith. And then there are the many other moments of life where it's important for our Jewish values to guide us then as well. Now, Abraham was living in Canaan for quite a few years before sending his chief of staff on an errand back to the old country to find a suitable bride for Isaac. So he had the opportunity to notice what were the values of the local culture. And he felt that they were not the sort of values that would maintain the religious revolution that he was championing. So he sent his chief of staff back to the old country with a kind of a very broad mandate. He didn't micromanage how a bride was supposed to be found, except that she should come from suitable people. The chief of staff himself is credited with this notion that I'm going to test the person whom I see for kindness. That's the main thing he's testing for. In a test for kindness, I'm going to, here I am standing at the well, I'm going to ask the person who comes down, the woman who comes down for a drink, let's see if she's also going to offer to water my camels. Now I want you to realize, those of you who've gone to the filling station to fill up your car, that filling up a caravan of 10 camels is not like filling up your car. It's more like filling up a bus. Have you ever been on a bus tour, when the driver has to stop and fill up the bus? It's a lengthy stop. It's quite lengthy. I once did a little cocktail napkin calculation that a thirsty camel, can drink 25 gallons. 10 camels in the caravan, 250 gallons. Water, 8 pounds per gallon. So, yes, sir, I'll water your camels for you, means literally lifting a ton of water. It's not a small thing. So, he's testing for kindness. Perhaps he recognized that Isaac was a gentler sort than his father. And as we, the readers, know, a gentler sort than his son would ultimately be also. Isaac was the soft one in the three patriarchs. And Isaac would need a life partner whose leading virtue would be kindness. Maybe the chief of staff recognized that. But in any case, there's something that you're going to hear right in the first Torah reading, which I think accentuates this. There's a very rare Torah trope called a shalshelet. Shalshelet means a chain. And essentially, it goes up the scale and down the scale 3 whole times. It's the longest individual note in the cantillation system. And usually there's a reason related to the text. Now here the word is a rather bland word. Vayomar, he said. It's not a very clear case of why it's a long trope mark. It was clear last week why we had that long trope mark, because Lot was tarrying. He wasn't ready to get out of Dodge City. The angels had to hurry him along. So the note was Vayitma Me'ah. He was tarrying. Or a few weeks from now, Joseph is going to take three times up and down the roller coaster to say no to Mrs. Potiphar when she propositions him. That might be because it was a real struggle for him to say no, or it might be because he had to say no over and over and over again. And you can interpret it either way. But here, it's a bland word, vayomar. And I've long thought, why do the rabbis put a shalshelet in vayomar? It's not grammatically necessary. You could have a shorter note at that point. I believe they want us to really give credit to the chief of staff. Later on in our Jewish tradition, we call him Eliezer, God is my help. It's not clear from this story itself. He, unnamed though he might have been in the narrative itself, is given due credit for understanding what would be the cardinal virtue that needed to be added to the mix. Now, this was shortly after the binding of Isaac narrative, shortly after the purchase of Machpelah for the grave of Sarah. Important deeds, but you wouldn't take either of those chapters as an emblem of kindness. You wouldn't take the banishment of Hagar as an emblem of kindness. So this chief of staff recognized that to make Abraham's future great, what was needed was kindness. So let's turn now to our Torah reading, chapter 24 in the book of Genesis, verse 10. Reuven, do you have a page number?
Page 132, verse 10.
132. And again, as a procedure, if you are reciting for the Aliyah, all you need to do is stand up at your seat, and since you're not close to a microphone, I'll ask you to project as best you're able. Reuven will do the initial paragraph, then we'll go to the first Aliyah, who is actually Reuven, because he's our Levi in place of Kohen. So I'll call you up when we get to that. Ya'amod Reuven ben Aryeh HaLevi v'Rachel bimkom Kohen.
Baruch shenatan Torah l'Yisrael b'kedusha tova
V'yatem avekim Elohechem chayim kulchem hayom.
Baruch Adonai Borach.
Baruch Adonai Borach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Borach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu mekolam asher b'chabanu mikolam v'natan lanu et Torah. Baruch Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayikach ha'eved 10 gemalim migmalei Adonav vayelech v'chol tuv Adonav biyado vayakom vayelech el Aram Naharayim el Ir Nachor vayavrech hagemalim michutz la'ir el be'er hamayim li'eit erev le'eit seit hasho'avot vayomar Adonai Elohei Adoni Avraham hakrena lefanai hayom va'aseh chesedim Adoni Avraham.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu mekolam asher natan lanu Torah temet v'chayei olam natan b'tocheinu. Baruch Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Yamod Sheni. We're on page 133. The verse is 13. Baruch Adonai Baruch le'olam va'ed.
אנוכי ניצב על עין המים, ובנות אנשי העיר יוצאות לשאוב מים. והיה הנערה אשר אומר אליה התינה חדך ואשתה, ואמרה שתה, וגם גמלך אשקה. אותה הוכחת לעבדך ליצחק, ובעדה כי עשית חסד עם אדוני, ויהי הוא טרם קהילה לדבר, והנה רבקה יוצאת, אשר יולדה לבתואל בן מילכה, אשת נחור אחי אברהם, וחדה על שכמה. והנערה טובת מראה מאוד בתולה, ואיש לא ידעה, ותרד העינה ותמלא חדה ותעל. Amen.
On page 133, the verse is 17. Ya'amod shlishi. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Vayarot ha'eved likrata, vayomer הגמיעיני נא מעט מים מקדך, ותאמר שתה אדוני, ותמהר ותורד כדה על ידה, ותשקהו, ותכל להשקותו, ותאמר גם לגמלך אשאב, עד אם כאילו לשתות, ותמהר ותיאר כדה אל השוקת, ותרץ עוד אל הבאר לשאוב, ותשאב לכל גמליו, והאיש משתאה לה מחריש לדעת, ההצליח אדוני דרכו אם לא.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam natan b'tokenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
On page 134, the verse is 22. Ya'amod Revi'i.
The fourth Aliyah. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Amen. Vayehi ka'asher kilu hagemalim lishtot, vayikach ha'ish nezem zahav beka mishkalo, ushnei tzimidim al yadeha asara zahav mishkalam, vayomer bat mihi at hagidi na li, hayesh beit avich makom lanu lalihin, vatomer elav bat bituel anochi ben milka asher yalda lenachor, vatomer elav gam teven gam misporav imanu gam makom lalun, vayikod haish vayishtachu ladonai. Amen.
Amen. We're on page 134, the verses 27. Ya'amod Chamishi. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vahid. Amen.
Amen. Vayomer Baruch Adonai Elohei Adoni Avraham Asher lo azav chasto va'amito me'im Adoni Anochi baderech nachani Adonai beit achei Adoni v'tarot hana'ara v'taged leveit ima kadevarim ha'eleh ulerivka ach Ushmo Lavan, Vayarot Lavan el ha'ish hachutza el ha'ayin, Vayehi kirot et hanezem, Viet hatzimidim al yidei achoto, Ucheshomo et divrei, Rivka achoto lemor, Kodiber elai ha'ish, Vayavo el ha'ish, v'hinei omed al hagimalim al ha'ayin, vayomer bo, Beruch Adonai, lama ta'amod bachutz, ve'anochi piniti habayit, umakom lagemalim, umakom lagemalim. Amen.
We're on page 135, the verses 32. Ya'amod Shishi.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Amen. Vayavo ha'ish habayta, vayifatach hagemalim, vayiten te'even umispol hagemalim, umayim lirchotz raglav v'raglei ha'anashim asher ito. Vayusam lefanav, Le'echol vayomer lo ochal ad im dibarti divarai vayomer daber vayomar eved Avraham anochi. Amen.
Amen. Page 135, the verses 35. Ya'amod Shvi'i. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vahid.
Amen. Vadonai berach et Adoni me'od, vayigdal, vayiten lo, tzon uvakar v'chesef v'zahav, va'avadim u'shfachot, ugmalim v'chamorim, v'teled, Sarah, Eshet Adoni ven ladoni, acharei ziknatah, vayiten lo et kol asher lo, vayashpi'eni Adoni lemor, לא תיקח אישה לבני מבנות הכנעני אשר אנוכי יושב בארצו, אם לא אל בית אבי תלך ואל משפחתי, ולקחת אישה לבני. ברוך. Amen. Let's do now a prayer asking for God's blessing on all those who've come up to the Torah today.
מי שברך אבותינו אברהם יצחק ויעקב שרה רבקה רחל ולאה יברך את כל אלה שעלו היום לכבוד המקום, לכבוד התורה, לכבוד השבת. הקדוש ברוך הוא ברך אותם, את משפחתם, וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם, עם כל ישראל אחיהם ונאמר Amen.
Now we're going to turn to a prayer asking for God's blessings of healing upon those who are ailing. I'd like to tell you in a personal vein that obviously you know we've had a number of changes of procedure from pre-COVID until now. What the change that we're forced to respect right now is personally difficult for me, because it had become a feature in our Temple Israel practice that every single person in the minyan, there was no hurrying it. Every single person who had names of those in his or her circle of concern could share those names. We would all hear those names, and we would lift those names up together in prayer. And we can't do that because that would put at a disadvantage all those who are joining us virtually. And I don't want to create a situation where, in any sense, you're a first-class davener if you're here, and you're not a first-class davener if you're there. That's not who we are, and it's not right. So, reluctantly, but I think it's the right thing to do, I ask each of us, just at this point, to hold in mind those names of the people who are in their circle of concern, and for all of them, we'll recite this prayer of healing. If you're able to, please rise. Misha beirach avotenu mekor haberacha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha beirach imotenu mekor haberacha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Yitkadal ve'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, bi'almadi v'rachirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'gala u'v'zman kari v'yimeru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach le'alam le'al me'almaya. Yitbarach ve'yishtabach ve'yitpar ve'yitramam ve'yitnaseh ve'yitadar ve'yitaleh ve'yitalal shemei dekudesha berichu le'ela min kol birchata ve'shirata tushbechata ve'nechemata da'amiran ve'alma ve'imeru. Amen. As we invite the maftir to come forward, the rest may be seated.
Ya'amod maftir.
And our reading goes back again to verse 34.
34 on page 135. Shabbat shalom.
Ready.
Baruch Adonai Amvarach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Amvarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam. Asher Bochar Banu Mikol Ha'amim. V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Vayomar Eved Avraham Anochi V'Adonai Beirach et Adoni Me'od Vayigdal Vayiten Lo Tzon Uvakar V'Chesef V'Zahav V'Avadim U'Shfachot U'Gmalim V'Chamorim V'Teled Sarah Eshet Adoni V'en LaAdoni Acharei Ziknatah Vayiten Lo et Kol Asher Lo Vayashbi'eni Adoni Lemor Lo Tikach Isha Livni Mi Benot HaKnaani Asher Anochi Yoshev Be'arzo Im Lo El Beit Avi Telech V'el Mishpachti V'lakachta Isha Livni.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam. Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet. Chayolam Nata B'tochenu. Baruch Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Please rise now as the Torah scroll is lifted and dressed. V'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael Adonai b'yad Moshe.
Vezot HaTorah asher sam Moshe. Vezot HaTorah. Vezot HaTorah asher sam Moshe. Vezot HaTorah. Livnei bnei Yisrael. Vezot HaTorah. Al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Vezot HaTorah.
You may be seated. Today's Haftarah, like today's Torah portion, deals with questions of succession. In the case of the Torah reading, it's Abraham and who will be the next generation of his family, Isaac and Rebekah, so that the story may continue and the line may continue. But the Haftarah tells about a different kind of succession, a political succession, going from one administration to the next. And it has to do with the last days of David and the first days of Solomon. It's a bit Machiavellian, if you must know. And I invite you to check out the sermon that I gave on this very subject in our temple YouTube channel. The Torah's authors do not hesitate to show us how the sausage is made. And I think their point is to say that if you put your faith in an autocrat, you're not putting your faith in God, and bad things happen for the country. I believe that's the message of the Haftarah. Now, Mark, will you tell us the page and the abbreviation that you're going to be doing, the abridgment?
Yes, I'm going to start with verse 15, and I will conclude with verse 15. When I made that choice, I kept thinking of all the kids that I taught. And said we're going to shorten it. I'll do that one sentence.
Well, whatever you do, we're happy for you to do.
I don't know the page number.
Reuven, what page are we doing?
Page 144, verse 15.
Yep. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratzav v'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo u'v'nviei ha'emet v'tzedek.
Amen.
ותבוא בת שבע אל המלך החדרה, והמלך זקן מאוד, ואבישג השונמית משרת את המלך. ותיקוד בת שבע, ותשתחו למלך, ויאמר המלך מלך. ותאמר לו, אדוני, אתה נשבעת באדוני אלוהיך לאמתך, כי שלמה בנך ימלוך אחרי, והוא ישב על כיסי. ואתה, הנה אדוניה מלך, ואתה, אדוני המלך, לא ידעת. ויזבח שור מריב צאן לרוב, ויקרא לכל בני המלך, ולאביתר הכהן, וליואב שר הצבא, ולשלמה עבדך לא קרא. ואתה, אדוני המלך, עיני כל ישראל, עליך להגיד להם מי ישב על כיסא אדוני המלך אחריו. והיה ישכב אדוני המלך עם אבותיו, והייתי אני ובני שלמה חטאים. והנה עודנה מדברת עם המלך, ונתן הנביא בא. ויגידו למלך לאמור, הנה נתן הנביא. ויבוא לפני המלך, וישתחו למלך על אפיו ארצה. ויאמר נתן, אדוני המלך, אתה אמרת, אדוניהו ימלוך אחרי, והוא ישב על כיסי. כי ירד היום ויזבח שור מריב צאן לרוב, ויקרא לכל בני המלך ולשרי הצבא ולאביתר הכהן, והנם אוכלים ושותים לפניו. ויאמרו, יחי המלך אדוניהו, ולי אני עבדך, וצדוק הכהן, ולבניהו בן יהוידע, ולשלמה עבדך לא קרא. אם מאת אדוני המלך נהיה הדבר הזה, ולא הודעת את עבדך מי Yeshev al kisei Adoni HaMelech acharav. Vayana Melech David Vayomer Kiru li levashava Vatavo lifnei HaMelech Vata'amod lifnei HaMelech Vayishava HaMelech Vayomar Chai Adonai Asher pada et nafshi mikol tzara Ki kasher nishbati lach Adonai Elohei Yisrael lemor Ki shlomo b'nei chimloch acharai Vehu yeshev al kisi tachtai Ki kein ese hayom hazeh Vatikod bat sheva apayim eretz Vatishtachu lamelech Vatomer yechi Adoni Hamelech David le'olam Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam Sur kol ha'olamim Tzadik v'chol hadorot Ha'el ha'ne'eman Ha'omer v'yoseh Hamdaber u'mkayem Shekol devarav emet v'tzedek Ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu V'ne'emanim devarecha V'davar echad midvarecha Achor lo yashuv rekam Ki el melech ne'eman B'rachaman ata Baruch ata Adonai
Baruch hu Baruch Shemo.
Ne'eman B'chol
Amen.
Rachem al Tzion Ki hi beit chayenu V'lalu vat nefesh toshia B'mheira v'yameinu Baruch ata Adonai
Baruch hu Baruch Shemo.
Samei Tzion B'vaneha
Amen.
Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu Eliyahu Hanavi Avdecha U'malchut Beit David Mashichecha B'mheira yavo V'yagel libeinu Al kiso lo yeshev zar V'lo yinchalu od acherim et kivodo Ki v'shem kodshecha nishbata lo Shelo yichben nero le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai
Baruch hu Baruch
Magen
Shemo.
David
Amen.
V'al Torah v'al avodah v'al hanvi'im v'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh Shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu L'kdusha v'limnucha L'chavod u'tifaret Al hakol Adonai Eloheinu Anachnu modim lach Umvarchim otach Yitbarach shimcha B'fi chol chai Tamid le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai
Shemo.
Kadesh Hashabbat.
Amen. Yishkach.
Mark, let me take a speculation that what brought a moment of mirth and smiling to you was you saw one of the late Nat Slavin's two pen notations, right? I purposely put the late Nat Slavin's copy of the Haftarah book down because Mark knew him for many, many years, and Nat wielded a pen like a real virtuoso. And I was hoping that Mark would see one or two of his graffiti, and sure enough, you did.
Some of the old Chaimims
Yes.
have pictures.
Yes, so he was wonderful. Okay. By the way, I should tell you that at this very hour, there is a parallel worship service taking place, conducted by Sheila Panitz and Tanya Conley. And that is a junior congregation service. And before I left for shul this morning, Sheila told me that the number of students joining the junior congregation service is higher than she's had for a number of years. So maybe it's a silver lining. We've got more kids actually in the service now than we typically do from from Saturday to Saturday. So let's be grateful for that. Friends, it so happens that most of the veterans we've called up to date have been members of the various sea services, the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Coast Guard. But I don't want you to think we're prejudiced against the U.S. Army or any of the other branches of the service. And we're going to invite Steve Legum, our president, who's a veteran of 6 years of service in the U.S. Army, to lead us in the prayer for our country, the bottom of page 148.
Our God, and
God of our ancestors, we ask your blessings for our country,
for its government, for its leaders and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Teach them insights from your Torah, that they may administer all affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst. Creator of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our country with your spirit. May citizens of all races and creeds forge a common bond in true harmony to banish hatred and bigotry, and to safeguard the ideals and free institutions which are the pride and glory of our country. May this land under your providence be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall experience war anymore. And let us say, Amen.
Amen. Just a word about this prayer. It was written by a great rabbi in the 1920s, Rabbi Louis Ginsburg, who was the leading Talmudist of his generation. And there had been many hundreds of years' worth of prayers for the government printed in the old standard Jewish prayer books. You know, we're familiar, may God bless and keep the Tsar far away from us. That's a joke. But there really were prayers for the government. This is the first prayer for the country in our long tradition, which explicitly asks God to give blessings to us living in a democracy. And that's a very important prayer in the history of Jewish prayer. When the current mayor of Norfolk, Mayor Kenny Alexander, was elected and presided over his first weekly city council meeting, he invited me to give the prayer at the first in that weekly series of meetings. And of course, I was very honored to do so. So I chose this prayer. I thought it would be words that the leaders of our local government could also stand to hear. And after the meeting, they went up to me and said, we're used to, some prayer or another, but this one really stood out as a wonderful one. So I commend it to your attention. Now a prayer for the state of Israel on the following page. Avinu shebashamayim, tzur Yisrael vegoalo, barech et medinat Yisrael, reishit smechat geulatenu, hagen aleha be'evrat chastecha, ufros aleha sukat shilomecha, ושלח אורך וימיתך לראשך, שריך ויועציך, ותקנם בעצה טובה מלפניך, חזק את ידי מגיני ארץ קודשנו, והנחילם אלוהינו, ישועה, ועטרת ניצחון תיעטרם, ונתת שלום בארץ, ושמחת עולם ליושביה, ונאמר Amen. Friends, this is the last Shabbat before the new moon. The new moon of Kislev, the month of Kislev, which is the month of Hanukkah, which will take place on the 25th day of Kislev, will begin Monday night and Tuesday. So we now turn to a special prayer announcing the new month on page 150. If you're able to, please rise and please read with me. May it be your will, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, to reawaken in us joy and blessing in the month ahead. Grant us a long life, a peaceful life with goodness and blessing, sustenance and physical vitality, a life of reverence and piety, a life free from shame and reproach, a life of abundance and honor, a reverent life guided by the love of Torah, a life in which our worthy aspirations will be fulfilled. Amen.
Amen.
מי שעשה ניסים לאבותינו וגאל אותם מעבדות לחירות, הוא יגאל אותנו בקרוב, ויקבץ נידחנו מארבע כנפות הארץ. חברים כל ישראל ונאמר, אמן. ראש חודש כסלו, יהיה ביום השלישי הבא עלינו ועל כל ישראל לטובה.
ביום השלישי הבא עלינו ועל כל ישראל לטובה. יחדשנו קדוש ברוך הוא עלינו ועל כל עם ישראל לחיים ושלום וששת ושבוע ונחמה.
יחדשהו הקדוש ברוך הוא עלינו ועל כל עמו בית ישראל לחיים ולשלום, לששון ולשמחה, לישועה ולנחמה, ונאמר Amen. Friends, while you are still standing, please turn to page 153. יהללו את שם אדוני כי נשגב, שמו לבדו, הודו על ארץ ושמיים, וירם קרן לעמו, תהילה לכל חסידיו, לבני ישראל עם קרובו. הללויה, מזמור לדוד, הבו אדוני בני אלים. Last two lines of the page. Adonai lama bulya vayeshev Adonai melech leolam. Adonai oz le'amo yiten. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. And now the second half of 154. Uvenucho yomah. Eitz Chaim lama chazikim ba v'tomecha meushar neracheha adarachei anoam v'chol netzivoteha shalom ashivenu Adonai v'lecha v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. You may be seated. I'd like to invite Admiral Herm Shalansky, retired, to come to the pulpit and share with us a message for our annual Military Appreciation Day. Friends, I think you know that we've been designating one of the two Shabbatot, either just before or just after Veterans Day, as our Military Appreciation Sabbath, and we've been doing so for quite a few years. And it's always a high point in our congregation. You can use that lectern right there. Oh, and Admiral, do you need this? Okay. So, Oftentimes, the speaker is someone who comes from within the ranks of our congregation, and we have wonderful speakers. But the opportunity to get Herm Shalansky to speak for us is really very, very special. I first met the Admiral, although I think my big brother Jonathan met you before I did, because you were serving together, I think, even in the 1990s and so. But I first met the Admiral when he was a captain, and the USS Theodore Roosevelt was receiving a Sefer Torah. I remember the day very, very well. It was Father's Day in 2007. And the Torah scroll was brought on board, and then Captain Shalansky was presiding. It was, first of all, for a landlubber like me, just to be sitting in a huge, hangar deck of one of those aircraft carriers, it's amazing. It's, you cannot even conceptualize it until you've seen it. It's just amazing. And there was the then captain, presiding magisterially. And I had a number of thoughts at the time. One was, God bless America. That was a sincere thought. Number two, a land where religious freedom, where free exercise of religion is taken seriously. It was really, really wonderful. And then on a more personal note, I was thinking, gee, I'd love to get that wonderful fellow to speak from our pulpit someday. So it only took 13 years, but here he is. We're all ears, Admiral.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Rabbi, and Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
I remember several years ago standing at the end of a very significant time in my career when I was turning over as the strike group commander from the Harry S. Truman Strike Group. And it had culminated of about over 30 years in the United States Navy. And we were in the ship in the hangar bay, and you have to picture a room about 10 times the size of the congregation room where we are right now. And I had getting ready to change command of an aircraft carrier, a strike group, 2 destroyers and 2 cruisers, about 8,000 sailors altogether, and $10 billion worth of equipment and hundreds of millions of dollars of operational field money. And it was a very big moment for me. And as I walked in with my navy blues and my medals, my white gloves and my sword, I walked up past my mother in the front row, who nudged an arrow, and he said, look, isn't it magnificent? My son, his sister-in-law is a very successful doctor. So, it makes you humble at all moments. Well, look, it's Veterans Day, right? The 11th day of the 11th month, the 11th hour. That armistice was called in World War I, and it was finally changed to really recognize veterans in general, which is why we're here today. And, we look at the veterans in the United States today, they're over 20 million. There's still around 700,000 from World War II, 1.6 million from the Korean conflict, 6.8 from Vietnam, and then 7.1 who served in the Gulf War and beyond. And really these latest wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, as all wars, with its frightful heartache and suffering, are but a long and sad continuation of our nation and our veterans and their struggle to work towards world peace. And so first, I'd like to recognize all the veterans in the room and everyone out there in the congregation for your service. Thank you for what you have done for our nation and our people. Now, I'm going to try to weave a story to honor veterans and some sea stories from my logbook, as what I call my Jewish naval officers travel around the world. And so first, let me just talk quickly about our Navy. We protect the sea lines of communication, American interests throughout the world, and promote freedom, navigation, free flow of commerce, access to the seas, and all those great things that come from the sea. Today, the Navy dominates just about all the oceans of the world. No other nation has anything like it. And Navy's ready to fight today to deter aggression, but peacefully resolve conflicts first and foremost, protect America, our allies and partners from attack. And they do these things on the surface of the water, below the water, in the air, with Special Forces, the Navy SEALs, and our partners, United States Marine Corps. And, by the way, they also operate in the cyber domain. Now, I can talk all day about these amazing ships and technology, but I really want to talk about one aspect that I believe I know a lot of, and that's the part of the Navy, it's called the Aircraft Carrier Navy, the part about the world's largest and most powerful ship in the world. You have to think about the Empire State Building, because that's how long the ship is. 1,096 feet long, 251 feet wide, 4.5 acres on the flight deck, more than 3 lengths of a football field. It weighs in at 100,000 tons of displacement. Everything about it's big. 60 tons of steel, 1 million pounds of aluminum, 4,000 rooms, huge elevators that can lift airplanes. And underneath the flight deck is this city. It's like Norfolk. It's got a daily newspaper, a radio, a television station, a fire department, a library, hospital, general store, restaurants, police and fire department, 2 barbershops, and a post office with its own zip code. It also has an electrical plant run by 2 nuclear-powered generators that last for 25 years, heating water to superheated steam that drive 4 21-foot propellers to speeds of 35 miles an hour, extremely fast for a ship of that size. And as I said, it has an airport on top, 4.5 acres, and that's the main function, to launch and recover airplane to do our nation's bidding. And on that deck is 60 tactical attack aircraft, electronic attack, airborne radar, and helicopters. And our aircraft carriers and naval aviation can operate off our enemy's coast. No bases are needed, since you carry the old airfield. They can reach out and touch deep into places like Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan to place precision weapons on enemies when needed or deliver humanitarian aid. Again, no other nation has this type of capability. But the reason it works so superbly are the men and women. Active duty veterans are the real heart and soul of our Navy and have made it so for many years. So who are they? Well, they come from all 50 states and territories. They're typically young, with the average age of 22. They're kids looking for careers or on-the-job training or serving to get a college education. But all of them are patriotic Americans. They have sworn to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. They're Caucasian, African American, Asian American, Latino, Hispanic, Catholic, Protestant, Baptist, and yes, Jewish. These sailors are not defined or referred to by these categories. The Navy's training have made them seamen, aviation bosun mates, gunner mates, quartermasters, and they're judged purely by their abilities and what they contribute to the team. And with veterans, of course, comes faith and religious beliefs and practices. And so when I joined the Navy in 1980, I was not quite sure what was going to be in store for me. And so in my second week in aviation officer candidate school down in Pensacola, Florida, if you've seen the movie Officer and a Gentleman, it kind of sets the stage. We graduated from being a poopy, as they called us in those days, sort of a hell week. Running around in green fatigues, doing push-ups, being yelled at, quite dirty, not much sleep. And then once we got through that, we graduated and got to put on our khaki uniforms and go to our officer candidate barracks. Now you could kind of feel the sense of relief after having survived, because at the beginning there were 38 of us and there were only 18 of us left. And we were in a line at attention, and our drill instructor, Gunnery Sergeant Buck Welcher, United States Marine Corps, tall, lean, a recon Marine from Vietnam, was introducing us to our new life as candidate officers. And he said he had some leadership positions to fill, and the first one he needed was a class treasurer. So he said all business majors in the class take one step forward, and the first to step forward was candidate Dobson, and the drill instructor got up in front of him and said, "Dobson, where did you go to school?" "University of Delaware, sir." "Well, we know only weirdos come from Delaware. You won't do. Get back." The same thing happened to candidate Clark. And then, in total surprise to me, I heard him say, "This won't work. All of you get back. Are there any Jews in the class?" So I took that one step forward, and Gunny got up close to me with his big, round, Smokey the Bear hat, poked it in my forehead. He said, Shalansky, we all know that the Jews own half the world and mortgage the other half. You will be our class treasurer. Now, I was totally unprepared for this moment. I was just a kid from Philly that wanted to serve his country. Yes, I had grown up in a privileged life with religious freedom, not only allowed, but really savored and celebrated in this country. And as a minor in history in college, I knew and, of course, studied the history of the Jews, the horrors of the Holocaust. And I knew what was going on at the time. It was 1980, the Soviet Union was in power. There was a lot of oppression of Soviet Jewry. But I didn't think that the context of my service would be defined in any way as a Jew. But now that the issue was raised by my drill instructor, was I to shrink or hide from this, deny it, quit, or was I to embrace it and prove to the drill instructor and my class and the Navy exactly what I was made of and wear the mantle of my heritage with pride? And it was here at the beginning of my Navy journey that this would define who I wanted to be and who I was to become. It was, in essence, a Hineni moment. Like, here I am. I don't know exactly what this had meant for me at the time or what would be in store for me, but I knew that I was going to stick it out. I would excel, and if they were going to call me out for being a Jew, then my drill instructor would see it not as a weakness, but at the very foundation of that which was going to give me strength. So ultimately, later in life, I realized that my drill instructor wasn't anti-Semitic, but was testing my resolve and poking for weaknesses. And really, I can say I never did experience outright prejudice in my career. And I really attribute that to the great Navy we served in, and really those who went before me, who did experience a lot of prejudice and changed the outlook and the understanding of the people. And today, people progress due to their own skills and determination, not where they were born, the color of their skin, or whether they wear a kippah. And not only that, today we acknowledge and encourage the added value and strength for our Navy that the diversity brings us. And we honor and appreciate all the diverse veterans and who they are and who they were. Like myself, I believe they had their calling, their Hineni moment. Many of us have joined out of patriotism, some because of a draft, and out of them, there are many who loved America for a multitude of reasons. Many because their ancestors, generations long ago, helped in her founding. And other men and women who love her with equal passion because they themselves or their own parents escaped from oppression to America's blessed shores. Some went for required tour duty and some made a career. But whatever that time that they spent, they became a warrior. And I look back on my time as not just a warrior, but a Jewish warrior, with almost a philosophical reminiscence. I learned to love that battlefield. It was there at sea that I felt most alive. I had to, at all times, act with full awareness and ability. Even the slightest lapse could cause failure and possibly the loss of my shipmates. And also knowing at times that there was so much out of my control, so much that could go wrong at any moment, such as in 2007, February, when I was captain of the Truman in the middle of the Persian Gulf, unbeknownst to me that in the morning, a huge downdraft of cold air hit the ground in North Africa, stirring up the dust and the clay and formed a huge front of solid sand called a haboob. And this wall of dust moved north into the Arabian Gulf and shut down all the airfields in the area. From my point on the cabin, from the bridge, looking out to the flight deck, I couldn't see the front of the ship or I couldn't see the stern where I had 11 airplanes that had to come back from a 6-hour mission over Afghanistan. These are things that are out of the control, and it's the days like that that all the time and all the practice and the good skills of the sailors come together, and every one of those airplanes arrived safely because there was no alternative. There was no other place to go. And a warrior is one who enters the battlefield obviously with a healthy dose of fear and seeks the will and power to overcome it. That act we call courage. This will and power to overcome fear arises from a principle or purpose or for a country or for God And the love for those outweigh the fear, and the warrior feels and for his own safety and can get over that fear. Take, for example, the fear to overcome landing an airplane. Now, it's hard enough to land on a land, but do that on a moving ship at sea, bouncing in the waves in the darkest of nights, or in the snow, or in the high heat of the Persian Gulf. And the landing field is moving away from you, and by the way, it's at a 10-degree angle. I'll tell you, it takes some chutzpah, but dedication to learn those skills and courage to overcome the fear. And in aviation, in my particular airplane, the E-2 Hawkeye, we spent years learning how to fly and about our aircraft and about our mission. And after we earned our wings of gold, that learning continued. After each and every flight, we had a brutally honest debrief and critique of everything we did. We were really competitive. We were striving to be the best aviator, the best crew, the best squadron, the best ship, the best Navy, because we knew the best was needed for our country to survive. And a big part of being successful at this was sharing this with steadfast comrades in arms, men and women who understand the pressure, the consequences, and gave unremitting trust, and also gave relief and unforgettable moments of humor and laughter that broke the tension and relieved the soul of the weightiness of what we had to do. Sometimes good old-fashioned Jewish humor, the sarcastic, self-depreciating style, but always humor. These comrades became a family, and even today, back from the first squadron from 1982, we still gather together and celebrate as a family. And the knowing sacrifice of being away from family and loved ones back on shore in our home port was difficult. There's an old tale of something that as soon as we deploy, within the first 2 weeks, something is going to break at home. And out of 38 years in the United States Navy, over 11 years of those were away from my family. And sometimes I found myself fighting for my own sanity, missing my family with a constant, heartbreaking ache. And of course, the sacrifice is not just of the service member. In time, we all learn to compartmentalize that thought, put them away while we're landing on the ship, to a quiet moment in the evening when there's time to write a letter or today an email. But the sacrifice at home is harder. There are spouses raising kids, it's single parents, often without proper resources or help. And the heartache of children, who know the danger that their parent is in, and that bad news, may arrive at any moment. My wonderful wife, Patty, tells me of the stories of taking the kids to my parents in Philly. She would go visit from Norfolk up to Philadelphia. And of course, it's over a 5-hour drive. And she would have to stop at a rest stop and 2 little babies in the car. The decision, should I wake them and bring them in? They're sleeping so soundly. Or to bring them in and having a boy and a girl and then bring them into the stall with her while she's trying to do her business as best as possible. And also the battlefield brought forth from me, and I think for many also veterans that serve, capabilities and potentials that I think none of us knew even existed. And part of this is self-discovery. Part of this self-discovery was living as a Jew in this lifestyle. Not just the observances like Shabbat in our chapel, which was underneath the flight deck when you would hear the pounding of the airplanes during and in between your prayers, or having a Passover dinner on the ship, or maybe even visiting Jewish sites, historical sites throughout the world, or even praying often when we pulled in port. And I remember one time in particular praying in Ireland, if you've ever heard Hebrew with an Irish brogue. It took a willingness to see the potential how being a Jew could make me a better warrior, and how being a warrior could make me a better Jew. And at times, attempting to reconcile the world of day-to-day operations with actions that were horrible in the consequence, as war is, but on the whole intended to improve the world. Each time, and there were many such times that I would confront the imperative of what was the ethical action. And each time of decision as a leader, I had to transform those thoughts and attitudes formed through the years of life and conditioning as a warrior and as a Jew into action on the battlefield that respected both of these perspectives. And often, as I think happens with so many as a Jewish warrior, I discovered more of my faith when I was at the limits of my faith. I found trust in the protector of the world when I was most unsure of myself. And in those moments, I felt the strength and courage grow from a source that was really outside of my understanding. And I look back on that time and rejoice for being challenged within and from without, because for me, and I think many veterans, it was the penultimate experience to enter the battlefield and to succeed. And to live knowing how many other veterans, the lucky ones, share this experience, while also sadly acknowledging that many others had not and had paid the ultimate price. So in conclusion, I'd say, wouldn't it be great that in celebration of all the veterans in our great country, we, all of us, could dedicate ourselves, first, to come together in peace in this nation, the way veterans fought, side by side, without concern for color, gender, or religion, or political affiliation. Therefore, we, citizens of this greatest nation, should dedicate ourselves to be voices for the greater good. We must believe in and fight for our freedom and democracy with our voices, our actions, and our votes. And in this, we work towards our task of tikam olam, to repair the world. Thank you very much.
Tishkach. Tach.
What a wonderful, inspiring message. Thank you very, very much. Admiral, we owe you a lunch. What we've done over quite a few years is when someone comes and graces us with an address, a guest speaker, it's been our temple practice that when we adjourn for Shabbat lunch, which we're not doing these days, we would have a table reserved for the guest speaker and anyone who wanted to continue the conversation. So you understand that we're putting safety and health first, and accept our IOU for a good kosher lunch. They say that the temple tuna here can hold its own even against some of the finest recipes in places like Ghent. But I'll leave it at that. Okay, we're going to turn to our closing prayers now. Linda Longman, you can lead us from your place in the Ein Kelohenu prayer on page 182. Kelohenu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kimalkeinu, Ein Kimoshienu. Mi Chadonenu, Mi Chemalkeinu, Mi Chemoshienu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shehiktiru Avoteinu Lefanecha Et Ketoret Hasamim. Please rise. Aleinu Nishabeach השמיים ויוסד הארץ. כי המלכות שלך היא, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו And now the mourner's recitation of the Kaddish, page 184. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alma diverach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon v'yamechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'li'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudsha berichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei shelama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Please give your attention now to Steve Legum, the president of Temple Israel.
I hope you can hear me. I'm speaking a bit louder. I'm not up at the podium there. First of all, I want to wish you all a good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom. I hope you have a wonderful day today when you leave Temple. I want to thank everybody who came today, those of you that are in the Temple, and those of you who have attended through streaming, who we don't know who you are right now, but I'm sure you're there. I think we had a very meaningful service today, and I think that everybody should give credit for this, especially the usual culprits, which would be Dr. Rohn, our Gabbai, Mark Stadler, everyone who had it, Eliot, Linda Longman, who did the Ein Kelahenu, and all of our veterans who showed up today. And I'll get to that in a minute. I just want to say, I'm not going to go over all the upcoming events because you can read the bulletin. As far as the rabbi's class on Sunday, on Tuesday morning, our mitzvah class, the quarantine book class. We do have the first Thursday coming up on December 3rd at 7:30 p.m. This month it was at 8 o'clock. So last month it was 8 o'clock. This month it was 8 o'clock because Joel had to do it a little bit later, but it's going to be at 7:30. And then we have the Torah at the beach next month. So you can read about that in the bulletin. I want to thank, again, the veterans who came today. And Admiral Shalansky was very moving. And, we have a lot of veterans here today. We have Jim Alberg, we have Mark Solberg, we have Rich Yanku, and we have Jim Gordon. I feel kind of like an orphan here because I was in the ranks of the Army, and everybody else was in the Navy. Who's that?
Carrie.
Carrie, you were in the Navy also. Very good. Appreciate you being here. So I want to tell you that we appreciate everybody who came today that was in the service. Having been in the Army Reserve for 6 years, I know that you guys were in longer than I was generally, but nobody can really understand what it's like to be in the military unless you're there. And been in the service and have seen a lot of things, are hesitant to talk about it. But I want everyone to know what a great experience it is for us to have you here. I want to also mention to the congregation, very important, about the food drive. The food drive culminated last Sunday, and it was an incredible, rousing success. Now, some of you here participated in it, some of you by delivering food, and some of you participated by providing food. I think the congregation can be proud of itself. We had lots of members that contributed one way or another, and I want you to know we produced over $10,000 worth of food and over $1,000 worth of donations to the food bank. When we got over to the JFS, they couldn't believe how much food we had brought. They have 2 pantries there. The first pantry was so full that we had to go around the back and unload the rest of the food there. And it was an amazing experience. And there will be an article in the Jewish News. I hope you all will see that. We'll also have an article in the next bulletin, comes out. But once again, I want to thank everybody in the temple that participated, because this was really one of the biggest successes that we've had. It's recognized by the community, and it's something we should all be proud of. I also want to mention briefly that Beverly Tiger is in charge of the Hanukkah Light the Night, and I hope that everybody will participate in sponsoring a candle or a shamash or a whole table there, whole table full of lights. It's one of our prime fundraisers during the year. It doesn't ask much of you except to make a donation. I hope everybody will donate to it. Call the temple if you would. I appreciate it. And lastly, I want to mention for the benefit of Norman Soroka, who is on the board over at the Jewish Museum and Cultural Center in Portsmouth. I don't know if you all have ever been there. It's quite an experience. And they're having their fall art sale. And he's in charge of that on Sunday, November 15th, from 2 to 4 p.m. And it's for a good cause. If you want more information on it, you can call Norman. Otherwise, thank you very much, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. We'll finish up with the Adon Olam, 187. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Li'et Nasa B'chefza Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'yacharei Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora V'hu Haya V'hu Hoveh V'hu Yihyeh B'tifara V'hu Echad V'en Sheni Lehamshilo Lehachbira B'li Reshit B'li Tachlit V'lo Ha'oz V'hamisra V'hu Eli V'chai Goali V'tzor Chevli B'yetzara V'hu Nisi Umanos Li Minat Kosi B'yom Mekra B'yado Avkid Ruchi B'yetishan V'yahira V'yimruchi Geviyati Adonai Li V'lo Ira. Shabbat Shalom. Very good.